Hello folks and welcome to OurGame. Myself Shane Stapleton, joined this week by Misha Waldron. We're going to have Tom Dempsey coming up on the show as well. A reminder, we're brought to you by OurGame.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. Maybe you want one of these slick little Mayo tops, maybe one of these Clare jerseys, I'm not quite sure. Nisha, big weekend that it was. We'll come to it all pretty soon, but I've just been made aware of pretty cool story, which is that you're going to be on ESPN. The North American College Finals are going to be on ESPN3. Reminds me of dodgeball, ESPN 8 Ocho.
The Ocho.
The Ocho. Yeah. But that's class. You're going to be on ESPN.
Yeah. So, in fairness, all the work was kind of done by a woman, an American woman over there called Kim Tessie, and she's been a big kind of pusher. She works like as a producer kind of with ESPN and with NBC Sports, I think, as well. Mainly basketball, so like NBA stuff and all, but she's been mad into the NCGA for years and years. And so she's been kind of pushing this for a while. I remember back in 2015, just after I had left, they actually showed clips of the Grizzlies hurling team training on ESPN before a Grizz football American football game, which was class. And Brent Musburger, the famous commentator, was talking about it and going on about how violent the sport it is and how exciting it is and all this. But yeah, for the first time ever, they're showing they're going to show the Gaelic football final and the hurling final live on Patrick's Day, and then it'll be repeated. And what it is basically it's a trial run to see will they pick it up and go from there and see, can we help grow it.
And of course, no better man to do a bit of mountain on ESPN. I'd say you're really looking forward to it.
Well, yeah, I'll just have to remember not to be speaking too much Irish. I've never done commentary in English, so it'll be new. Myself and Clare O'Connor are doing it because she's living in Atlanta now. So she said she'd come up. It's in Salt Lake City. It's in Zion Bank Stadium, I think, which is, and if you Google it, like it's an unreal, like you've been in Washington Grizzly Stadium, obviously in the University of Montana. So it's very similar, kind of picturesque. It's surrounded by mountains. And at this time of the year, the mountains will obviously be covered in snow. It's still ski time. So I think it's Zion Bank Stadium. Unreal location. So hopefully it's not too snowy and we get a good weekend to hurling. So what it is, it's kind of like the old format. It's kind of like the Fitzgibbon. You play matches all weekend. So it's fairly tough now. I played in it 2 years. Look at that. Look, it's unbelievable. So the matches are starting at 7 a.m. Saturday, and they run until 1 or 2 o'clock, and then there's soccer on after, and then Sunday, then you finish off the bracket basically, and then it whittles down to semi-final and final. First year I played in it, we played in New York, and the final was in Gaelic Park. It was class, but we played 8 matches in a 24-hour period. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant though. That is absolutely class. So best of luck with that. Tom Dempsey, as I said, he's going to be on the show a little bit later on, so we'll come to Wexford against Waterford. Get your comments in. I see they're already flying in already. How'd you pick up the black eye?
Nothing exciting. Surgery. That's the thing. It was such a bore. I had a cyst on my eye, and I just had to get rid of it.
I wanted a hurling story.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, we were playing a match yesterday, and last block, and came in through the face guard, hurling the eye. Just something boring, unfortunately.
That's what we want. Come here. Let's start off with some of the events from yesterday. Like, it was a very, very busy day of hurling. We'll go back to Saturday at some point, also talking about Limerick against Tipperary. But your own home county, Kilkenny, lost by 16 points to 19 against Clare. I suppose just first off, I'll ask you broadly. We'll get into some details, but broadly, what did you make of the game?
It was a good game, I thought. Now, a bit stop-starty, but some of the scores, like from both teams, like some of the scores and stuff were class. I thought really early on, Clare were kind of playing the ball into the forwards perfectly. Very similar to what they were trying to do against Waterford down in Welsh Park, but the ground wasn't allowing for the sliotar to bounce into people's hands. Like when you can give a pass that's bouncing into the forward hand and he's full flight in the run, into Galvin and Reedy, like, they'll do awful damage. Like, and then kind of I think Kilkenny must have changed their shape because they cut that out, and then Clare started going long and it wasn't working at all. They got a bit of joy out of that in the second half, but it was a good game, physical, tough. A lot of lads in around the breaks, but probably nearly too many fouls or too many frees, and then real inconsistent stuff. Like there was one stage there, and TG Carr even GABO even retweeted it, kind of a real puzzling one. And even you saw TJ was coming out to get the slipper off your man to take the free, and he just was kind of smirking and shrugging his shoulders. When you see that, when neither team really knows what the foul is for, that's not a great sign. And then, like, there was all this real kind of technical stuff that, yes, are fouls, but they're not going to be given in championship. Like, we know that. They'll be just ref completely different in championship. And then I thought TJ Reid was very harshly done by in the second half not to get a penalty. So, few good things, few middling things, real typical league game, but better. I could probably a better game than we've seen so far in the league.
If I was I'm sure you're aware of this stat already, but the only Kilkenny forward to score from play in the second half was John Donnelly. It's not a great sign, is it?
No, and I was even thinking, so while watching the match, like Owen Cody was quiet enough when he was getting possession, he probably wasn't really in scoring positions. Now, look, that's really down to the Clare backs. Like I don't think even got his shot away really. They defended him very well. And then Adrian Mullen, I'd say, when you look back at the match, brilliant winning the ball, did really well to get on the ball, got into good positions, and then just some of the angles he was shooting from, and I know like he's usually really accurate, but he probably hit three wide that, number one, he probably shouldn't have been shooting from them places. So he was getting on the ball. John Donnelly was excellent. He probably was unlucky not to get two goals. Or it was an excellent block on one, and then the other one was kind of that flick he did where the keeper saved it with his body. But yeah, worrying. Even though, again, TJ, I don't think did he score from play, but still was setting up a lot, and obviously deadly from the frees. And speaking of frees, Clare going into championship again, like you can't.
You have to pull your hair out. The amount of stupid
No.
frees. It's like every team has to give away a freeze, but it's like little needless slaps, tugs when you don't have to. They have numbers there, and it's just indisciplined.
Indisciplined, and like my father used to always say, like, geez, like if you're close enough to tug a lad's jersey, you're close enough to hook him or block him.
And he's a former Kilkenny minor coach back when he actually used to win stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's that golden period. And now he's coaching up in Derry, and look what the Derry minors and under 20s did at the weekend. They won Ulster Championship, so fair play to them. But yeah, but then even on their side, like they're missing too many frees, and we've seen it the last 2-3 years in a row when they get up to Croke Park, they come out of Munster, and everyone thinks, oh, geez, yeah, this is the year they'll do it, this year, and it always comes down to TJ Reid nails 99% of them, and Clare miss 4. It's always somewhere around 4 or 5. You just cannot miss that many frees.
Like they look at the moment, and this is, you have to view it through the prism of there's no Tony Kelly there at the moment, there's no Shane O'Donnell, there's Ryan Taylor. We hope he's back sooner rather than later, but I'm not entirely sure what his prognosis is at this stage after the cruciate. But geez, at the moment, you can look at it that David Fitzgerald is a hurler in the year in waiting, or geez, they're quite reliant on him at the moment. Yeah,
but not wrong with it. I mean, like if he's hurling that well alongside Tony Kelly, and I really like the way David Reedy is playing as well. I really like the way he's playing. I thought he was so good for such a small man. He really makes the ball stick. Like he uses his body intelligently, and he's added the thing to his game now where he's going with his hand, much like Owen Cody and Galan and stuff, where it's bang, it's in the hand. And I thought actually Smith was good as well. He got two savage points. Was probably unlucky with another one. Duggan was quiet enough, and then
he won a couple of hard balls though, and actually won a few puckouts over David Blanchfield, which is no mean feat.
This is the thing in the second half. Then he won a savage one where he put the hurl into his left hand, put his right hand up, caught it in front of the goal, set up point there, and another one caught a puck out, put the ball across, and it finished with a point for David Fitzgerald, I think. Where he did that lovely sidestep up along the sideline. So they started getting a bit more joy with the long ball in the second half, and then of course, when they pulled away at the end, that last couple of minutes, when they jumped from 1 point to 3, those 2 long range points were just class, and the place erupted and pulled it out to 19-16. So it's good in a way that they are getting a range, kind of it's different lads scoring, that you're not relying on a free taker plus Tony Kelly, that it's now, look, if David Fitzgerald continues playing like this, I think if Reedy keeps playing like that, and then you add in Tony Kelly, and then you'd be expecting then from one game to another, maybe McCarthy will play well this day, maybe Rogers will play really well the next day, and then you throw in Duggan as well. It's that kind of rotation, but 3 lads that are consistently playing well, and then 3 lads that go up and down. But yeah, I see a lot of people talking about the freeze there. I just thought their owns. I just thought he was too inconsistent. Um, just that so like and there was another one as well in the second half. TJ Reid was bent over the ball, rising it, and next thing he tumbled and landed on his face, and it was just play on. And you kind of go, well, how do you think he ended up on his face? He obviously got dunted in the back. It's a foul. He's rising the ball. This kind of stuff. But again, come championship, then lads will be allowed pull, drag, slap, everything. It'll be it just kind of killed the first half. It was excessive in the first half. It eased off a bit in the second half, but first half it was something like I think there was about 20 frees in the first half, like, which is crazy.
Do you know, towards the end of the game, you'd have to give Clare big credit. I think it was Keith Smith who played out that nice ball for Diarmuid Ryan to pop it over the bar. Next ball was a puck out, and who pulls it out of the air? Only Diarmuid Ryan. Brilliant catch. He pops it off to Peter Duggan, and he fires it over the bar. But I mean, that's where you see the real best out of Diarmuid Ryan. And I sometimes wonder, like, do they ever call him, like, he's such a talent, aside and say, stop shooting from the sideline from 100 yards out, and all of you in the back, stop shooting from the sideline from 100 yards out, because if you pop that ball into Smith or whoever's inside, lads, we can do so much damage here. Like, it's the odd time they go over, and it papers over the cracks of the 3 or 4 times they don't. I think this is the time now that Clare they actually have to just deliver now. There's no more excuse for Hard Luck Story or Croke Park Hoodoos or whatever it is. Look at the talent that you've named in the forward line. I'm going to come to it in a minute. Not many teams actually have a guaranteed centre back who everyone agrees he is the man. You could talk about Kilkenny. We'll come back to that in a minute. But by God, like, they have everything in place. At this stage, Brian Lohan has to get his decision making right. He has to get his man markers right. Darragh Lohan went on TJ Reid. I wonder will they keep that in the future. But like at Croke Park, he has to get his decisions right. If somebody's not working on a marker, he has to get it right. I actually think he has everything now, and it's up to Brian Lohan to deliver.
Yeah, and they are absolutely massive as well. They look like they're carved out of stone. Like it's insane the condition they're in. Like kind of that's what's so good about when you're actually at the matches and you're down the sideline level. Let's say when I was there GABO, you don't really appreciate it on the TV. You have an idea, but then when you see them warming up and you're kind of beside them, and you're just like, these lads' arms and chests and shoulders, they're absolutely massive. But they're primed. I think they're long enough on the road now that, okay, they should be, like, realistically, they should be making the All-Ireland final, really. Like, it just, whatever about it, right, if you make and you get beaten by Limerick in a close game, right, fine, but you cannot be losing in a semi-final again for the third year in a row. But, again, like we said, Kilkenny were better than them 2 years as well. So, this thing, if you're getting beaten by a team that's better than you, fair enough, but there was just too many mistakes in them games that they got wrong, and then too many frees going missing. But, yeah, like that, the long range shooting, like you're talking about, yeah, has to be cut out, because the way they played in the first 15 minutes there yesterday was so good. They were dragging the Kilkenny half back line around the place. Richie Reid was getting sucked out the field and was being sent in beyond them and bouncing into lads' hands that were running these perfect passes that the Kilkenny full back line. What can you do about that? Nothing. And then obviously Kilkenny adjusted to it, reshaped, and then they were just bombing ball. And I don't know how long exactly they went without scoring, but it was a while, because they were getting no return off the long ball. The Kilkenny half back line kind of took over there, were winning the break or winning it cleanly. But they just, if they're smart enough and cute enough, because they're definitely athletic enough, David Fitzgerald, to be fair to him, for a man of his size, he has great footwork, really nice footwork, and more often than not, he's pretty accurate. Diarmuid Ryan as well, it's like you're kind of saying, it's halfway line up you should be shooting from. I know against Cork in the championship last year he scored whatever 3 or 4 brilliant ones, but they're miracle scores. Like, if you were playing a game, you were coaching a team, you'd never be encouraging lads to shoot from there, but they all went over that day. But then the next day he was trying it again, and I think he hit 3 wide from back there. You're standing inside there, you're David Reedy or you're whoever in there, hands in the air, you're kind of shaking your head going, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Come on, get the momentum, keep it going in, nail the lads inside.
Maeve 12 says it's now or never for Clare. They're a different animal in Munster than in Croke Park. Will Lohan be there next year? I don't know. And there's another comment here from Adrian McGrath. Nisha is talking bollocks about Peter Duggan, I'm afraid. He scored, he assisted, and he pummeled Kilkenny coming out. Plus, this is pure lazy shite about Clare relying on Kilkenny for scores. Is this RTE for FFS? Wow, he's going in heavy there against everybody, really.
But I said it was good that they're not relying on Tony Kelly. I said it was good now that they've arranged more scores. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at. And Duggan was far better in the second half than he was in the first half. That's what I say.
Okay. Nisha, can I move on to the point about the centre backs? Paul Young says here, would put Paddy Deegan back centre back and leave Mikey Carey was in midfield. Yeah, it was an interesting topic on League Sunday because Neil McManus and Anthony Daly started off talking about maybe an issue at centre back, and Richie Reid was taken off early enough from the centre back slot. And then for a finish, they were talking about a luxury of options back there. Daly, I think, said, and I just wonder, do Kilkenny, and you can extend this to Tipperary as well. They've tried Robert Byrne there, they've tried Brian McGrath there. I'm not entirely sure Tip have their answer at 6, or maybe it's just going to be Brian O'Mara, maybe even Barry Heffernan. So there are options there. Now, on the Kilkenny side of things, right, the ones that seem to be talked about are Mikey Carey, Paddy Deegan, Richie Reid. Now, maybe you'll come up with another option as well. But the three of them were in the half-back line in the 2022 All-Ireland, when, of course, the half-back line got absolutely annihilated by Limerick, and especially on the puckouts. And I would say that Brian Cody's setup that day, more or less, on puckouts, handed the All-Ireland to Limerick, because otherwise I thought Kilkenny were brilliant. What do you think of the centre-back slot for Kilkenny, and I suppose more broadly for other teams?
So, yeah, a lot of teams now have really good hurlers at centre-back, I think, whereas there's a big difference between being a really good hurler and a really good defender. So,
but
like, say, for example,
now because teams are finding they're having to press up out around midfield and leave mano a mano at the back. So now being a really good hurler at centre-back isn't enough.
So that's what I'm saying. You need a defender at 6, like you just do now, because people have kind of out-taught a lot of systems and know to run, and everyone's so athletic. They run and carry and, deliver the ball from different areas. So you can't be like kind of that sweeper going side to side anymore. You have to be a defender. So I think I would probably go with Paddy Deegan at centre-back, and then have your speedsters and hurlers alongside him. So like maybe Mikey Carey and Richie Reid at 5 and 7. And then, now that day in 2022.
Yeah, 2022 though.
I know. So that I was just going to say, so that day, I thought, like, you're sitting behind the goal watching it. When I was watching it that day, there was way too much space in front of them, and they were getting pulled and dragged everywhere. And then they didn't know to stick or twist to run with the lad that was crossing, or to hold their position, and they just got torn apart that day, right? And they were just getting pulled and dragged everywhere. So with a smarter setup, I think, but it's a hard one because you have to have a defender at 6, I think, especially when you have somebody as good as, like, the full back line. I think is fairly solid and probably sorted there, where it's Hugh Lawler and Tommy Walsh and Mikey Butler either side of them, and you're kind of going, yeah, look, that's as good as a full back line as can you have at the minute, and you're going to get 2 good man markers that hold their lads down, and then Mikey Butler actually is a threat going forward now as well, and then you have Hugh Lawler, top 2 best full backs in the country, top 3, whatever you might have, right? It could be tossed between the 3 of them, but then I'd love to see Mikey Carey as 5, I suppose, because again, it's an attacking option, kind of the way O'Loughlin's were playing, where you can burst forward and you put pressure on the wing forward to stop him, as well as he's a great hurler. But I think Deegan at 6, he's as tough as nails. He's a bit of a nasty streak in him, which what you need. And yeah, just let him go from there. Now, he was good yesterday from centre forward, but he was dropping back a lot and all that. But I think the luxury of having somebody like Richie Reid, where he's floating around and he does his best hurling, winning breaks off the full back line, and picking up ball because he's such a great hurler, and delivering it long kind of off his left side and this and that. I think you need somebody there marking, defending, holding the middle, and running the show from there. But not easy come by because of the way hurling has evolved. Defensive skills are kind of nearly going out of the game with a lot of teams, a lot of underage lads especially.
Derek Ling was saying afterwards, we're trying to find our best 15, our best panel. We need to find out who's going to be there come championship. Could you pick the team? And in terms of like forwards sticking their hand up this year, we saw Grode Dunn and Timmy Clifford come off the bench along with John Donnelly yesterday. They were the only 3 subs used. Are there lads putting their hand up, do you feel?
Yeah. Shane Murphy, big time. I think it could be there. So like if one of them lads in the half back line isn't the half back line, they could go, like, let's say you have Shane Murphy, or sorry, you could go Richie Reid, Paddy Deegan, Shane Murphy.
What about David Lansfield?
And then, see, this is the thing, right? So it could be between, there's 3 or 4 lads there you could rotate in and out, but Mikey Carey can go to midfield. I don't know about Shane Murphy going to midfield. I suppose Paddy Deegan could go to midfield, but I prefer to see him centre back. Like, look how good he was at O'Loughlin's. Like, he was absolutely brilliant centre back at O'Loughlin's. I think just put him centre back, and maybe you could have Richie Reid, Mikey Carey midfield with Blanchfield, Deegan, Shane Murphy maybe as the half back line. So it just depends. It depends what way it goes, because Croke Park is very different than Ennis as well, where a lot of teams. It'd be very interesting to see how the Leinster Championship goes, especially against Wexford, because Wexford won't be pumping high ball down and pumping high ball down. I couldn't imagine on the Kilkenny half back line. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes. So there's a lot of places there between the midfielder and half back line. A lot of lads that can play in each position. So it's just a matter of Derek Ling then finding right. But I always thought when you're building the team, look, you put the best backs in the backs, and then you let the forwards kind of pick themselves. Because how many times, you've seen with club teams or whatever saying the forwards are too soft. So they put their best centre back up, centre forward. We needed a hardness up there. And then you're taking out a scorer. And then the first sub off is the corner forward. So I I think, yeah, I just think build your best half back line. I think the full back line is set enough, obviously, on Murphy being goal, and then let the team from midfield up pick itself, depending on training. But John Donnelly definitely put his hand up yesterday. Could have came off the field with 2-2 from play, and he was only on for about 20 minutes. So it's an interesting team to pick, like, because some of the under 20s still that won the All Ireland, let's say, still probably haven't made the jump up yet, which is totally understandable. I mean, if you're still only 22, you're you're just not as physically developed or as strong or as hard nosed as even Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen, and these guys that have been on the go for about 6 years now, 6, 7 years now.
Yeah, no, I'd agree that Paddy Deegan is definitely in the top six backs for Kilkenny. And it probably more speaks to, I suppose, Derek Ling looking for ball winners in the forward line, like you had said there. So it's kind of interesting no matter what way you want to look at it. We'll move on to the next game, though, Nisha. Cork 5-28, Offaly 16 points. Look, there was 10 points in it at the break, and you could excuse Offaly, I suppose, for energy waning and heads dropping a little bit towards the end. But Alan Connolly with 3-1, he was exceptional. Declan Dalton scored 7, 6 of those replaced balls. Brian Hayes and Darragh Fitzgibbon, they both came on and scored 1-1 apiece. Rob Downey at wing back, he was a force of nature. Do you know what? At times, because, and you can understand Johnny Kelly's trying to get experience into the younger players that are being brought through. And like Owen Downey put in a big hit at one stage on one of the smaller Offaly lads. And I was like, geez, this is like the under-20 All-Ireland final last year between Cork and Offaly all over again. There was an element of, physically anyway, in stature, men against boys.
Yeah, and the way Cork are built, you see, this is the way they kind of handle any of the developing counties. Like, you'd often kind of see it against, like, say, when they play Antrim or, sometimes even Dublin as well, actually. Not that Dublin are a developing county, but you know what I mean? Where it's like they're so athletically far ahead of everyone that they just pull away. And then Offaly, like, Offaly are a collection of really, really good hurlers and are going about it the right way. I talked about this before, but they're so small and they're just inexperienced as well. Like they had a goal chance there in the first half where
Dan Burke.
Dan Burke. First of all, your man, you could see who was running with the ball was watching from to make the move. He didn't make the move in the correct position at the right time. Now your man did very well to hold it and gave the pass, but he should have been running towards the goal, receiving the pass, and then nailing it low. And again, this comes with experience and kind of coaching where you'd kind of pull him aside, look at this video again. You should be running in at an angle alongside him rather than waiting out drifting out in the wing there. And he went too high, blasted over the bar. And that was at a time when the game was kind of close. And you were kind of like, right, this is a decent little game of hurling. But then, like, just as the game went on, it's just the physicality of Cork, their speed, their physical size and stature. They just took over the game. And when you're bringing on somebody like Darragh Fitzgibbon and you're after playing, let's say, you're after playing 40 something minutes, and if it's your first or second season of senior inter-county hurling, and then this lad comes on, you're just going, So, I think Offaly are on the right track. That's obviously the biggest beating they've taken. But up until this point, I actually thought they were going well for a team that's up there and looking to develop. But Cork, yeah, look, Donald Grady kind of said it as well. It's like you don't learn much from this kind of stuff. And Connolly inside, like, just so clinical, just class. Like, and that's the kind of target man full forward Cork has probably needed for the last while.
Yeah, and I'm sure if he was 100% fit from the start of the year, they'd have had him in there earlier. But what I'd say about the first three goals that Cork got, which were all through Connolly, is that number one, three dirty balls stuck inside. So that's a positive for Cork that you wouldn't always associate with them. At the flip side, Offaly and their inability to deal with those balls going in. And I'm not saying it was easy for Ben Keneally. Like, he's a really, really good player, but he got spun a little bit easy for the first one. Probably didn't cynically enough, dark arts, I would say, play the man a little bit away from the ball, spoil him, because Connolly, and he's a strong man, probably shouldn't be able to turn there. Same with the second ball, the one that I think it was a miss-hit shot, maybe from Conor Lahan, and Connolly was able to flick it down. Now, maybe a little bit of dark arts, and you've played as full forward, you've got that back who's kind of playing your arm or sort of pinning you down in a way that looks fair enough to the referee, but everybody knows what he's doing to you at the same time. And I just think there was a little bit of naivety with Offaly, and maybe because they're just not used to this level of opposition.
So this is the thing again, like where you're developing, and the more they get exposed to this, and I know, look, like it was a heavy score and this and that, and Verney was kind of talking this with me before, and nearly arguing with me, like that it does no good. But it's like, yeah, but you kind of need to get this kind of exposure as many and as often times as you can, so that then you get up to that level, and you expect this to happen, so that you are then on a higher level than, let's say, the Joe McDonald lads, and you win the Joe McDonald, come out of it. But yeah, like even the tackle and screen he ended up coming off, it looks accidental, when the knee is left in and he's given a dig in the back of the leg, and it's a kind of a dead leg thing, and he has to come off. But yeah, like that, like I remember my introduction to that, the first ever adult game I started, I was marking Martin Fogarty, would you believe, a junior B match in Castlecomer, and every time I moved, I was getting a hurl in the back or a kick in the arse or a clip in the heels. It was something, and and the ref is doing you no favors. Like, so this is the thing, is like they're all really good, nice hurlers. They're brilliant at hooking and blocking, but now it's a point of fill out the jersey and start laying it into lads a bit at the real highest level, that you like that, right? Look, if he turns you, just do some kind of a clumsy tackle. Don't let him go in on the goal. And because, look, the punishment isn't there. I know you're always saying like it should just be a penalty when you do that, which eventually maybe it will be, but until it isn't, or until it is, just do that. Like O'Loughlin's did it in club games from the Kilkenny club championship match. Anytime anyone turned them and there was a sniff on goal, someone left in an arm or pulled the jersey or tugged the lad down or wrapped around, made it look clumsy, and you go, oh, ref, sure, I got tangled up in him, and yeah, you get a yellow card and you get a talking to. It's better than conceding a goal,
Yeah,
right? And then
yeah,
and that's what you just have to learn.
And the other balance then for Johnny Kelly is he wants to get these players in as soon as possible to get them used to it. The other side, they're so small that a physical team like Cork, you're almost worried, is that lad going to get through the game okay? But it's such a tough balance for him, because he needs to see, can that quality survive at this level? I want to ask you about Antrim against Westmeath. Now, I'm sure you only saw the highlights like myself, but it was 218 to 115 for Westmeath for a finish there. And I suppose, look, one thing that stood out to me was just the goalkeeping issue. And you don't like to say it, but there's a converted wing back, Tiernan Smith, in goals for Antrim, and he spilled the ball to net. And even the second one was a little bit unconvincing when it was being whipped to the back of the net. And you're just thinking, surely you've got to pick a solid goalie. Yes, you want a goalie who's mobile. Yes, you want a goalie who's, a nice striker and all that. But at the back of it, you need someone who commands the square almost first and foremost.
So this is the thing, and then you think of it there, Darren Gleeson is over them. It's like the centre back issue. It's like a full back. It's like a corner back. There's a reason these lads are playing there. It's so specialised. It just has to be that person.
So isn't it strange then that a former All-Star goalkeeper is going down? Now, maybe he'll be proven right in the long term, but at the moment, it's a little bit difficult.
I know, and it's just so costly though, losing that game to Westmeath for Antrim. Like they want to keep this status again, kind of like Offaly. They want to keep this status for as long as possible. That's a big blow for Antrim. Great win for Westmeath, obviously, but it's a big blow for Antrim. But I played in goal by default twice, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it, because a big thing, and I remember somebody saying it to me before one of the games I played in goal, was make sure you know where the goal is. And I was kind of like, what are you talking about? Because I'd never played in goal, and you're following the ball, and next thing you turn around, the goal is 7-8 yards to your left or to your right. You go, oh, just run back into goal. So, look, it's such a specialized position. I just don't think you can have an outfield player in goal. I just don't think you can. And then like, let's say I know you're always kind of giving out about Billy Nolan with Waterford as well, where it's kind of like, look, and it's like the defender thing I just said, like put your best goalie in the goal and leave him in the goal. Put your best defenders in the defence and leave them in the backs, right? Because just now I don't know what the issues are surrounding the panel and the squad and who's in with Antrim and who isn't in with Antrim as far as goalkeeping, but yeah, you would think with, like you said, an all-star goalie like Darren Gleeson that they kind of have this sorted and nailed on by this stage of the league.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at who did the scoring for Westmeath. David Williams scored 8 points, 7 of those placed balls. Owen Keys with 1-2. Davy Glenham with 1-1. A selection of other players with points also. Conal Cunning with 7. Niall McKenna with 1-1. So, yeah, it's a difficult day at the office for this Antrim team. And just in terms of the table, they're bottom of 1B. They're going to be in 1B next year. Westmeath obviously on 2 points, same as Dublin. In the other table, Waterford, they're going down for next year, so are Offaly. So there's still plenty to play for in the last couple of games also. And I'm wondering what game we'll go on to next. Actually, just to broaden out that chat we're about to have on goalkeepers, we might talk about the Waterford side of things because Tom Dempsey's going to join us soon, hopefully, technology permitting. But it finished up Waterford 123, Wexford 223. And Waterford in the game, they had a 16-point-17 lead at one stage. They started off brilliantly. They were 7 points to 2 ahead. And Davey was saying, we lost our shape in a big way. That's disappointing. A number of lads coming back who are way off match fitness. Whether we have Stick coming for us, that's fine. So just if we're to talk from a Waterford side of things, and look, you played for Ballygunner before. You probably can measure the mood music down there a little bit. Where are we at with Waterford?
A lot of supporters. I've cousins in Dungarvan as well. A lot of supporters very, very, very unhappy because they were awfully excited about this year and going into this year and how they'd see any kind of development, and there has to be development, and Welsh Park is back open, etc., etc. But probably still too many lads missing. Just probably still too many lads missing when you think of it. Like when you actually list out, like Davey kind of ran through who was missing there yesterday again, and you're kind of like, geez, yeah. Because they seem to, he said, lost their shape. They seemed to tire very quickly in the second half, and Wexford just kind of took over the game because they were Waterford 6 points up, and you kind of thought, all right, they should kind of push on here now, motor on a bit here, and they just didn't.
Well, look, let's run through some of the lads who are unavailable. I think Tyg de Burke is going to be back soon enough, and he was sick there, had a bug for maybe 10 days, so that might explain why he isn't back just yet. So if you're number 6, your number 3 is a few weeks away. You've got Irla Daly out, Ian Kenny, Conor Prunty. As I've already said, Prunty. But that's a lot of key players. But still, my frustration would be I'd look at the team, I look how they play, and it just doesn't make sense to me. And I also want to talk about the goalkeeping situation because both goals were avoidable. Now, the first one, I just think Sean O'Brien should have been able to stop that shot from Conor Hearn. But Billy Nolan was turned by Conor Hearn at 6. And turned too easy. And I just think he's obviously an excellent club centre-back, but I think it's different gravy. And, you're talking about you have to be a defender first now as a 6 at inter-county level as well as being able to hurl. I just feel like he should be in goal. Sean O'Brien's had some very good games. He is a good goalkeeper, but I think Billy Nolan is the number 1 in the county. Also not commanding the square for the second goal. And you could say that right, and you could rightly say that Jack Fagan should be holding his man out. But you need someone who's dominating those situations. So to have your best goalkeeper playing at number 6, where I don't think you're necessarily getting what you want from that situation, and not getting him into goals, I just don't get it.
Yeah, I remember like the second goal, the big high ball that was coming in. I remember Adrian Power from Ballyduff one time. I was playing with Ballygunner. There was a ball coming in like that, and I thought I have this. I'm going to score a goal. And next thing, blackout, and I was face down on the grass. And when I looked up, he hit the ball. He drove it down the other end of the field, and that's what I was thinking. Is like the goalie there should be coming out, and even if the fullback isn't holding out the man, everybody needs to be cleaned out and go with your hand and catch the ball. Be brave enough and confident enough to get up. A goalkeeper and even a full back kind of and stuff like that, I always think is very weak going up with a kind of a bat, like an overhead bat. I always think there's too much can go wrong there. And like we saw, it doesn't take much for the ball to drift and flick into the net. The first goal, now Now again, look, I'm not a goalkeeper coach or anything, but I would have thought that as soon as he's breaking in and when there's no defender between you and the forward, you just charge out and try block him and take him. I would have thought now that you just close down that gap, make the goal as small as possible because you're now bigger and the view is obstructed. So, and even if he does bat it, that at least you've come out and make a decision. Whereas you can't allow him to keep coming in and keep coming in at you because now the goal is huge. So that's just what I would have thought in the two goals. But again, like you kind of said there, the first goal is more down to the half back line being broken and somebody charging right through the middle because you know there's not much the keeper can do there, but he probably should have charged out when it was just one-on-one and nobody in between him and the forward, I'd have thought.
Okay, well, delighted to say we have Tom Dempsey on the line now from the front seat of his car. Tom, can you hear us okay? Can we hear you okay? Can you hear us, Tom? Yeah, not sure Tom can hear us there. I'll kick Tom out and hopefully he'll be able to jump back in. Just can't hear him at the moment. But just in terms of some of the Wexford players that they're missing, like Lee Chin, Liam Ryan, Conor Devitt, Jack O'Connor, Conor MacDonald, Rory O'Connor, Liam Oak, McGovern, Dee O'Keefe, Conal Flood, Oisin Foley. You could argue that they have a bigger injury list than Waterford, or certainly equivalent to it. So excuses kind of, they're on a little bit, you can't, everybody's missing, lads.
Yeah, but that's the thing, and that's what league games are like. And
hold on, we just see Tom. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now, lads. Apologies for that.
Ah, lovely. We were just going. Nisha was mid-flow there, but I just want to get your take on Wexford's performance against Waterford there yesterday. 123 to 223 for a finish. Probably made it tighter than it needed to be, but had to come from a good way behind to get there.
Yeah, it was interesting, Shane, and the first 20 minutes, 20 minutes, I said to myself, my God, these Waterford guys are absolutely flying. I said this, I think there were about 6 or 7 points up. I said, this is going to be a tough game. And I suppose I just, at this point, say Jamie Byrne, it was worth the admission money alone to watch Jamie Byrne, what he was doing with the ball at that stage. I just thought it was fantastic. But the second half, I think I'd heard you say it. Who's there? Nisha, I was saying there, the way Waterford hurled was quite amazing, and it probably I think what summed it up for me really in the second half from a Waterford perspective was you're 2 points down, you're gone into injury time, and the boys were saying even on the Sunday game last night, Mark Fanning passed the ball out to Matthew O'Hanlon. He passed the ball across to Niall Murphy. I gave it back and nobody pressed up. I said to myself, am I actually seeing things here, And I thought Michael Kiley was causing major problems at the start, with the high ball in. But there were times, lads, that I looked, and I don't want to be too what's the word, given out about things, because we know that we're not exactly in the promised land yet, but we're in a better land than we were in now, to be honest with you. But by God, I don't know what you thought, Nisha. Were you at the game yourself? You were.
No, I was hurling the match, so I wasn't there this time.
Well, that was a good reason, but I just couldn't get over it, Shane. I said to myself, even when they brought on Deise Hutchinson, he was inside in the full forward line and there was nobody around him, and at times there was maybe 30-40 yards from the Wexford goal where there was actually no Waterford player, and there were during times that there were 6-7 points down, and I just couldn't fathom it. You see, I'll tell you, lads, and I don't want to talk too much, but I think we've been branded, people of my age, you're lucky, but we're branded as dinosaurs. That we've been given out about this sweeper system, and I think there's a place for the sweeper system if you're playing against a gale force wind, or if you're 3 points up with time up and you get somebody back. But I don't think that you can go out without a plan B. And just Waterford went from a team in the first half that looked like they were flying in the wind to a team that just seemed to have no kind of push forward in them. And I thought their tactic was a little bit crazy, to be honest with you.
And when you look at this Waterford team, is it similar? Is the setup in any way similar to how Davy had Wexford a couple of years ago?
It is, but I thought Wexford had a little bit more of an attacking bent to it, really, Shane. I mean, one thing that Wexford had yesterday, and I have to say, with Richie Lawler, Seamus Casey, and Kevin Foley, they're not the biggest men in the world, but by God, Richie Lawler, he's a good man under the ball. He's as good as a man under the ball as you see. Seamus Casey was winning ball, and never at any point did I look up the field that there wasn't two Wexford men at least inside. And, the turnover of Wexford wins in that position were very, very high. And I just couldn't get over. Like, I think Anthony Daly made a good point last night. It gets to the point that maybe the players need to say to themselves to push up, because if you're 2 points down, lads, you need to use your own initiative and start pushing forward. But I never felt in the second half at any point that Wexford were going to lose the game. And I did feel going down that this was going to be a very, very tough encounter. And I just from the tactic, I'm not saying it was Davies' tactic, but there were times that I felt that way with Wexford as well. But we have to remember, lads, in fairness to Davy, he had us in an All-Ireland semi-final. Shane could have beaten Tipperary that day. We could have won an All-Ireland. So, a lot of what happened. But yesterday for Waterford, I mean, players like, Jamie Byrne, Callum Lyons, Michael Kiley, now he was a big loss to them, went off. Jack Prendergast, they're very, very good players. Deise Hutchinson, but I do believe, I believe if Waterford had went out yesterday 15-on-15, they'd have probably got a better result than they got when they went out the way they went out yesterday.
We were talking about the free taking earlier. Nisha, 4 different players took frees for Waterford yesterday. Paddy Levy knocked over a beauty from long range. I was surprised to see him taking one, but he knocked it over nicely. You had Shane Bennett hitting one from the sideline around 55 yards out, and it probably never got above knee height. I thought it was strange to see him hitting a free. Like, given the talent there, it just seems strange almost. But I suppose Stephen Bennett's out, Austin Gleeson's not there. But do you have any positives in terms of like Waterford? What would you be looking at if you were trying to spin it the right way?
So Shane Bennett is actually usually really good at frees, and then you see the other thing then is like the lads around in the fall, apart from Patrick Curran, let's say, none of them take frees for their club even. So I was actually, like you there, I was very surprised to see Paddy Levy hit one, and that's something he's added to his game this year, is long range scoring, because before, maybe 2 years ago even, you'd be kind of saying, right, let Paddy hit it, like, one should let him drive it, because he's always doing the scoop pass, he gets a lot of possessions and stuff. But yeah, like, you would have had, say, a couple of years ago, you would have had Pádraig Manny, Stephen Bennett and Maurice Shanahan on the team. All 3 of them, and Patrick Curran, all 4 of them are class free takers. But, when they're gone, Shane Bennett is there to step up. But yeah, I know he mishit the first one. The first free is always a funny one to match. You might think you're ready for it, but then a lot of times you aren't, and you just miss it. But then he scored a really good couple after that, so you'd kind of forgive him at that. But positives for Waterford, when you think of it, they were motoring fairly well. They're trying new things, and some of it looks mad, like, right? Some of it really does look mad when you're at the games, right? Especially this thing, like Tom was kind of referencing there. I was at the Waterford and Clare game, doing that game in Welsh Park, and there was times where they had one or no forward inside the 45-yard line. So then, but Mikey Kiley was playing. So then you've gone away from making the ball stick and holding it inside to lads looking up and wanting to deliver it, and then they have to recycle it or turn back and spin around, and it's getting popped around. And then, like, Waterford fans, right, love old school kind of Ken McGrath, Fergal Hartley hurling, where it's blood and guts, and even though they're great hurlers, intelligent hurlers, but that it's one, you break the tackle and it's delivered. And they're kind of gone really far away from that. Like, they're gone very, very far away from that. It's all about holding possession. But then it's nearly gone to the football side of things, where it's so analysed that what are you doing in possession? What are you doing with possession? How much have you given away? And then the way other teams set up, you can't always go along. So I think a really good example of kind of what you need to be able to play was Kilkenny against Cork in the first half, where you do both. You show both, that you have to have one or two people inside that when you're under pressure, you can deliver it. So you draw lads back, and then when they're drawn back, then you can carry it and run through the lines. I can pop and run and pop and run. So you need to be able to do both. And Waterford just at the minute, I think, are kind of relying too much on doing the run, pop, run, pass. But then when they get to a certain point of the field and they want to deliver it in, nobody's inside and nobody makes. So again, I was talking to a Waterford selector after that Waterford and Clare game, and I was just saying, and I was saying on commentary as well, the inside lads, when they were inside, they make the complete wrong runs for a forward. They're running towards and out, so towards the man in possession and out away from the goal, rather than making a move and cutting back towards the goal, so then that there is that angled run and a pass when someone breaks the line. So that they're kind of, with coaching and video analysis and stuff, you probably can point that out and show them, yeah, paralysis by analysis, exactly. Like, it's just too far gone of maintain possession, don't make a mistake, rather than, lads, when you have the chance, let it in. When you don't, use it. Because I remember when Dave was over Wexford, I remember I used to be going mad looking at Conor McDonald being 60, 70 yards away from the goal, and you're kind of like, leave him inside and put someone fast around him. There's your target, make it stick. Mikey Kiley is like, how good has he been in the Fitzgibbon the last few years? And that's what his game is. He's standing there, he's so big and strong and awkward, basically, but just he can score goals, he'll hold up the ball. And if you have someone like Deise fizzing in around him, Patrick Fitzgerald even maybe out around floating as well, I think they could be very dangerous. And then Caleb Lyons, Jack Fagan, Tyke de Burka, Paddy Levy back there, Jamie Barron as well. I think they still could be dangerous. And maybe they're hiding things that they're going to do in Championship. But I actually thought that last year too. And the way the year went on, they actually kind of got worse, unfortunately. So I don't know. Basically, I don't know.
Tom, I think your mic needs to be turned on again, Mike. I'm not sure why, Tom.
Yeah, I'm back, lads. I'm in a temperamental car here, lads. But I was just saying, Nisha, as well, that, like, a very strange thing happened at the start of the game, and it only happened for about 10 seconds, I'd say now, you know. And I was looking at the game. You can hear me now, lads, can you?
Yep.
Yeah, I was looking at the game, but 4 of the Waterford forwards came over to the stand and stood there for the throw-in. And I just said, what in God's name is happening? Why would you bother even doing that? Like, you know, and I remember Liam Griffin, and you see, I don't know, lads, maybe I'm of the old values, but he always would have told us that when you're under pressure, just get back your formation of your team, get your full back line back in position, get your half back. And then he said, see out the storm, you know, and put a bit of formation on it. When things went wrong in Waterford yesterday, and let's be fair, in the first half, as I said, they were pinging the ball, they were doing really well, it looked really attractive hurling. But when things went wrong, there was a number of things happened to Waterford which would worry me. First of all, their supporters were really, to use the word with a P and a second word with off, they were really getting annoyed. The second thing, the Waterford players, this pinging and the ball sticking, it stopped. They were dropping balls. They were doing everything wrong. Thirdly, they didn't know where they were. I actually thought it. And the fourth thing, and the more worrying thing for Waterford. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not. Tyke de Burka wasn't on the field. Deise wasn't on the field at the start. You know, there was some very, very good hurlers not there at the start. But don't get me wrong. But there was a nervousness, lads, went into the Waterford play. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't think that any direction whatsoever. They just didn't seem to know. And as the thing got worse, really, to be honest with you, lads, if Wexford hadn't made the mistake with the ball going across the square, you know, the misplaced, Waterford could have been beaten by 8 or 9 points for a team that should have been 7 or 8 points up in the first half. The big worry for Waterford at the moment is when it went wrong. By God, it went badly wrong. And I know we're talking about Waterford. From a Wexford perspective, I have to say that probably the turning point of the game, or the move of the game, was when we put Shane, as I say, Jamie was flying in the first half. We put Shane Reck on Jamie about 5 minutes before half time. Jamie, he's still effective, but his effectiveness diminished. And Shane Reck had one hell of a game, you know, close enough to man of the match. And the other thing is that I was looking at the Waterford players. They look bigger than Wexford and whatever, but actually Wexford outfought Waterford in the last 25 minutes, lads, you know. And I'm not one to be down on it. I love Waterford. If Wexford didn't win Ireland, it's Waterford I'd like to see win All Ireland, but they have a lot of work to do over the next 6 weeks to kind of get that. But I tell you, their confidence, the problem is when the game plan wasn't working, their confidence seemed to be shot as well. And that's, you know, they were brought back into the game. There's a lot of worries there. But in saying that, I've been talking about Waterford, Shane, but like Wexford, Chippers, we had some great performance. Like Fanning made a save in the second half. By God, this man is back to his best. And he's a neighbour of mine. I have to say I have a soft spot for Mark Fanning. I love him as a goalkeeper. He's such a... But by God, lads, there's few goalkeepers in the country. And maybe he hasn't got the credit he's deserved over the last couple of years. There's few goalies would have made that save. He was superb. His puckouts were superb and whatever. And right the way up, Niall Murphy, he's a new lad on the block. But Niall again, you just take Niall, say, and Connor Foley. They're playing really well. But you know what? If you were asked if you were to ask Waterford how to take pressure off our full back line, we couldn't have done it any better. Waterford couldn't have done it first half, because even in the first half, the first 4 balls Niall got were Waterford conceding the puck out. And Niall could, stick it on the hard play, and it gave him confidence, and he's a good player. But by God, but the fact that they didn't have a man up picking up something, I couldn't believe that they didn't press high on a couple of puck outs, lads. And I know I'm like a broken record, but Damien Rick is hurling the hurling of his career, and that's saying something about him at the moment. Corey Dunbar came in. We were in commentary yesterday in Southeast Radio, and we'd Richie Lawler, to be honest with you, young Keane Byrne gave an exhibition. 5 points from play, corner forward. He's a slip of a fella, but he's getting very strong. Gave an exhibition. The Waterford full back line seemed to be really. We were commentating yesterday, and we never referred once to Dee O'Keefe, Liam McGovern, Lee Chin, Jack O'Connor, any of these guys that were missing yesterday, Rory O'Connor. Wexford are a funny county, and we can't lose the run of ourselves. But we said if we could stay up in Division 1, we'd be happy. Now I'm beginning to think, if you had even Rory O'Connor, Lee Chin, a couple of Liam Ryan, Jesus, lads, he's still one of the best fullbacks in the country. If we had them, we mightn't be too bad. And yet, I'm fully realising that Wexford have to be very careful. We have to keep an even trajectory, because I thought second half, and even in the first half, some of the things that happened good for us were of Waterford's making, to be honest with you. I just thought, Jenny, if I wanted Waterford to play the way to play a certain game, that's the game I'd like them to play yesterday. But, we're not in too bad of a place. But I'll tell you this, Cork are going to be a different kettle of fish next weekend. And being from Wexford and the disappointment, we have to be careful of that. But I was just very surprised the way Waterford played yesterday. And I was very worried, because I want to see Waterford putting big strides in Munster. I was very worried the way they capitulated in the second half.
Yeah, and Tom, you mentioned Niall Murphy being able to get his confidence up. There was a point at one stage in the second half where the ball was hit out to him, maybe around the 45 or something like that. He soloed the ball all the way up to midfield, and nobody got within 15 yards of him. And then he was able to poke a ball cross field for Seamus Casey to take it and pop it over the bar. And I was like, what's going on here? It's a contact sport.
Do you know a funny thing, Nisha and Shane? We went down. I don't get me wrong, because I'll tell you one thing: if you're from Wexford, you're certainly not showing any arrogance, because by Jesus, we've been up and buried all our lives, But the truth of the matter is, you've made a great point, Shane. There wasn't a glove. Not a glove laid on Niall. And to be honest with you, there wasn't a glove laid on Seamus either. Seamus came out, and he is in the form of his life. Great young player, lovely chap, and doing very well. We came out, the ball was over the bar. Again, Conor Hearns run through the Waterford defence. We were going down to Waterford yesterday, and we were saying, Jesus, this is going to be a tough one. These boys will lift us now. And I know hurling against Waterford over the years, you don't get anything soft down in Walsh Park. But actually, when you saw Conor running, what did he run? 50, 60 yards straight through the middle of the defence. Not a glove laid on him, and put the ball in the net. I think it was Conor actually hit somebody, got a yellow card for himself after it, But that's not Waterford, lads. That's not Waterford for me anyway. And I do believe Davey is a good manager, and he can get them in shape. But 6 weeks, I think there's a couple of things they're going to have to look at. One is get their players in the field. 2 is have a plan B when things are not working. And maybe to a certain extent have a plan A now at this stage, because certainly it wasn't working yesterday.
Yeah, Nisha, I think your microphone might be muted, but I was going to ask you that in terms of the previous game against Cork, Jack O'Connor was able to solo, I think, about 60 yards and put the ball in the back of the net on the back of a Waterford puck. What do Waterford need to do between now and Championship to right the ship here?
Nail down the centre back.
That will be the work, though, if he stays fit. He's due back.
I know, but I mean, look, Tyke at this stage, unfortunately, I love watching him, he's class, but he just the injuries are kind of killing him at this stage and ruining his career, and so you can't really, unfortunately, rely on him to be there for the full season. So then somebody else needs to be ready-made to play centre back if Tyke goes down. Now, that could be Paddy Levy because of the way that they play their centre-back. It could be Jack Fagan, maybe. Could be Calum Lyons, but could be Darrell Lyons, maybe. I don't know. But somebody needs to be nailed down as a 6, and nobody can come through the middle like that again. It's just, that's criminal. Again, if you were dealing with under 14s or minors or whatever, you'd be saying the same thing. It's just lads, if that happens once, it doesn't happen again the rest of the season. So that's their first thing. And then I think, kind of like Tom is saying there, you need to have a plan A, you need to have a plan B, and you need to be able to mix up your game. Because if you're doing the same thing all the time, right? Like the Wexford management team, I know Tom was talking about not getting too excited. The Wexford management team is probably the perfect management team that they have at the minute, that they won't panic, they won't get too high, they won't get too low, they don't get too excited, but they're really, really intelligent fellas that know how to stop that kind of a game. So then that's stopped. Now what do you do, right?
Yeah.
You need to have the option to stretch it, to shorten it, to stretch it, to shorten it, to go wide, to go narrow, to run, to pass, to strike. Hurlers are so good now, you have to be able to do it all, and they're so athletic, you need to be able to do it all. And I just think that somebody like Kevin Mahoney or Mikey Kiley inside as a target man and people running and working off them, that's nearly the most ideal way you're going to go with it, because they're good hurlers, they're strong, big, awkward, kind of ignorant fellas that'll put a bit of manners on a full back, hold the ball up, and then they're intelligent hurlers that they're either going to create a goal or score a goal or win a penalty or something, right? So I think there's the thing, because you mix in around people like Jamie Barron, Deise, Patrick Fitzgerald, Tyke de Burka, Calum Lyons, and Jack Fagan, in and around that kind of stuff, and Prunty full back. They have the makings of a really, really good team. And then obviously sort out the goalie. We've talked about this a few times. I presume come championship it'll be Billy Nolan. I presume it will be. It kind of has to be, I think. And then because they have the bones of a really good team, and I like, you know, in some ways, right, I like the way they think outside the box and they do different things from their own puck outs. You know, some of the stuff they did against Clare was very clever, from their own puck outs, the way they used Paddy Levy. And then when Clare pressed up on Paddy Levy, they went directly over the middle and Jack Prendergast caught a lovely one and they got a foul and a free off it. And so making Clare think, right? But they need to have a structure in the forwards, kind of like Tom was saying, and even growing up and still playing or whatever, like when you get under pressure and you concede maybe a goal and a point or something like that, the half forward line should be in the half forward line and the full forward line should be in the full forward line. And somebody needs to put their hand up and go, puck it here. It has to be pucked here to me. You know, Owen Larkin was great at, Shefflin was great at, these kind of lads. That's the kind of leadership you need. Where, like, or even from a Waterford point of view, it was Dan Shannon, it was whoever, that Seamus Prendergast, the hand went up and it was pucked on top of them. The free was won, the momentum was killed over the bar, or they created something. So that's something they need to, you can't always run through the lines, but you can't always go along either. And I think Kilkenny have learned that in the last 2 years as well. They're starting to change. So yeah.
See, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I genuinely looked at Waterford yesterday and I thought they were striving for perfection. They were striving for absolute perfection. Yeah, give the 5-6 passes. And Michael Kiley, like I'd say in the first half, Calum Lyons caught every ball that came out. Any ball that they played long. They have really good men in the air. And I think when you name, they have the makings of a very, very good team. But as you say, I think they have to mix it up. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I won't get any great famous things. But the one place I don't want to see Deise Hutchins get the ball is maybe 15, 20 yards from the goal. But the way they play at the moment, it kind of has to come from deep. And you were saying as well there, Shane, from a Waterford perspective as well, few kind of pluses. You know, they have the players, as Nisha is saying. Calum Lyons was excellent in the first half, you know, serious operator. As I say, Jamie Barron was excellent. Michael Kiley was excellent. And Jack Prendergast took 3 points from play as well, you know. And they have the players, but I just think you won't get perfection. By God, you won't run through the Limerick defence. I know we all relate to Limerick, but you won't run through the Limerick defence, you know, the way they're trying to do it. I think it actually takes a lot out of teams as well. You know, they're moving it from the back and takes a lot of running to do what they're doing.
And Tom, just if you were to go back to last year, the end of the championship, Darragh Egan, you know, it had been his, I think, third season at that stage. But look, things hadn't gone well. There was the defeat to Wexford, hadn't been turned it around a little bit then the next day against Kilkenny, ultimately stayed up. But how much has the mood changed since Keith Rossiter has taken over and we've seen some of these performances?
Well, do you know funny thing, Shane? You know when you take over a club, you take over your own club. I remember Father Jim Butler said at a funeral many years ago, it was a brother-in-law, Barry, was really sorry to lose him. But he said Barry was the most popular man in the club. He said, possibly because he never took over a senior hurling team in the club, because if you want to make yourself popular in your own club, or unpopular, but Keith at the moment, Wexford have had outside managers over the last couple of years. So Keith has more than a pardon here because the supporters are told. Like the one thing that surprised me yesterday, I'd say Wexford had nearly a bigger support in Waterford yesterday, and that's not Waterford either, And I think that what's happened last year, he went in with the kind of mindset, he does know all the younger players. He's been with the 20s for the last couple of years. They're kind of starting to see a Wexford man over the team, so it's one of your own and whatever. Now, that can change, lads. You know yourself, go out in Cork beat you by 12, 15 points next week or something. We're back to doubtful times. But, that's the truth of it. It's still that the championship is still to come. And Davey is saying that. That's one big advantage, Keith. He knows the players. I think he also went in, people said, the Walsh Cup doesn't matter. But he got off on a good footing. He got off on a winning footing. If Galway didn't want to play their full team against Wexford grand, we were going to go out with whatever we have and we were going to try and win this game, a kind of such, and that's been a plus. So he's done very well there. They've trained very, very hard, and to be honest with you, we're in a really good position compared to the way a lot of people would have predicted Wexford this year after almost going down to the we can see now, Shane and Nisha, how lucky in some ways that we got out of that Kilkenny game last year. By God, we were close to the Joe McDonagh, which for me would have been disaster. But I think at the moment, the feeling in Wexford, the support is beginning to build big time again. We're our love of hurling, I often said before, is not from success, but it's from hope. And we have hope at the moment. Not hope to win an All-Ireland, maybe to get to a Leinster final, maybe an outside hope of that. But there's hope back in Wexford hurling. And again, I'm saying we're not losing the run of ourselves. Now, as some of the younger guys like Shamie Casey is, Keane Byrne, Richie Lawler, watch out for that name, lads. Richie Lawler is going to be a big, big play. But I think what the big thing for those guys this year is that even looking at Niall Murphy started every single game. He's come out of nowhere. I'm not saying, there'll be competition for Niall when the boys come back, but he hasn't been put in, took off. Seamus has been put in full forward, left there. And I think there's a consistency after coming into what Keith Roster and them are doing. They've a good backroom team. And I think that's really the keystone and the cornerstone of what's happened. But lads, don't get me wrong. I mean, we won a league match yesterday. We've drawn 3 games. We drew it Offaly as well. We're not saying we're going to, but we really, after last year, like the biggest fright, lads, that I ever got in my life was sitting in Wexford Park last year, and Westmeath were 17 points down, and they come back and won the game. And then I looked at the week after and said, lads, we're going to let there be no mistake, we've seen Offaly go down. It would have been a disaster for us. But now, I'll have to say, my heart is beating a little lighter than it was this time, last summer, lads. So things are good at the moment. But you know what? Cork are capable of coming down. We saw what they did to Offaly yesterday. It's not the done story, but if you were to give a rating of where we've come from at the start of the year to where we are now, we're very happy.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Because another thing people kind of seem to forget as well is under Keith Roster, the last couple of years, I know they didn't win a Leinster and All-Ireland, but the under-20s, like the year Kilkenny won the All-Ireland, like they only lost to Kilkenny by a point in the Leinster final,
Yeah.
And so there's a crop of really good players that Keith obviously knows, and they're developing well because unlike Offaly, they're not trying to flood them all in and get 7 or 8 of them starting. There's a mix between the lads who've been there 6-7 years, won a Leinster title a few years ago, and then won 3 under-21s Leinsters.
Yeah.
And then now there's these next batch of fellas around 21, 20, 22 that are like some of them, like Byrne, Dunbar, Lawler, like these lovely little skillful hurlers that once they physically develop and get used to it under the stewardship of the older lads, could be a serious, similar to Offaly, they're kind of probably a year away. Remember I said this, a year away from being 2 years away kind of thing. But It's good. It's great. It's always great for Leinster hurling when Wexford and Offaly are strong, and then throw in Kilkenny and Galway obviously as well. Like in a couple of years' time, or maybe even this year, I think Wexford would make a right dent in Leinster.
I think so, Nisha, and you've said it true. What I said last year, that not only if we'd have went down, it would have been a disaster for Leinster hurling, because we're probably the biggest populated county, or hurling county would have a big support and whatever. Look, we're not running ahead of ourselves. We're still in Division 1. I don't envisage any issues with Joe McDonagh in the coming year. So that's a concrete kind of foundation that we have at the moment that we were struggling with in the last couple of years. So no, we have to say that things are good. Just one other thing, Les, I just get what you think about it as well. I went the whole way to Ballycran on Saturday. Wexford were playing Camogie up there and got the result. And I'll be honest with you, it was the longest journey I've ever had to a match. But there were lovely people. We were fed well. I don't know if you were ever there, Nisha, but I was. I'll tell you, I thought we came back on the ferry anyway, but it was a great day, and they were fantastic and whatever. But and I know it's another day's debate, but every single hand pass was blown by the referee with the Camogie girls, right? And I just said I watched Limerick, and I'm not giving out about Limerick. I genuinely think now we need to look at something maybe of an underhand throw of no more than 5 yards or something, because I looked then at the more powerful teams and they're almost let put the ball in your hand, like, you know. And I just think it's I just got it from the Camogie, like we're penalising at different levels, and yet at the highest level we're not making much of an attempt to pull it up at all. It's a major problem.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would lessen the amount of short play. And it's not that I'm looking to stamp out short play. I think it's somewhat necessary and smart and all that, but just the variety of long and short. But Tom, actually, seeing as you've kind of mentioned Limerick in a roundabout way there, the short play, and Tipperary were at it as well. Limerick 26 points, Tipperary 316. After the game, John Kiley, he's been asked about conceding the 2 late goals, which, took some of the bad look off the scoreline for Tipperary in one way. Now, I'll come to it in a while that I actually don't think it was that bad from Tipperary, but he said it felt like a loss. What do you make of that now? They went out, they scored 26 points, they bossed Tipperary in a lot of it. Felt like a loss?
I think when you've won the last 4 All-Irelands in a row, you're looking at things to motivate yourself. I mean, if Wexford were down there in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, or maybe Waterford were down there and they won by a point, it'd be a win. But I'd say I think it just sums up the level of perfection these guys are trying to get to, really. I only saw the second half of the game. As I say, I was back from Ballycran late enough, kind of such. But for me, I'd say what he's doing, like, and it was Tom Morrissey, or was it? Yeah, was it Tom gave the ball away, the last ball that they kept? And I'd say he's kind of, you're talking to Tom Morrissey, one of the hurlers of the years, all-stars. I'd say the man is not able to get in through his front door with regard to awards and whatever. And I'd say that John Kiley's just saying, Tom, if you let your you're not going to let your standards drop here. He said, he's going to say, and bottom line, he's going to be keeping that on. And you know what, being honest, Shane and Nisha, it's ominous, isn't it? It's ominous for the rest of the country. But I will say one thing about Limerick. And at the end of the day, I thought they were quite comfortable with Tipperary. They only won by a point. Someday, lads, they're going to leave it a 1 point win, and we're going to say, they were well on top and whatever. They'll be caught. Because the great Kerry team in 82, lads, they were strumming along and or whatever. That bloody goal is going to come and torture them. And I'd say John Kiley is very aware of that. He's saying, yeah, we were comfortable, but we were 5 up with, into injury time, and we only won by 1. Someday, lads, you're going to be caught. And John Kiley is I think he's calling that early. But something, lads, my worry, Donica O'Dalig or Donica O'Dalig or whatever, full forward, you brought in Seamus Flanagan as a sub, Colin Coughlin, very impressive, bit caught on one of the goals, all right. Jesus, they just seem to be manufacturing more and more of these players, don't they? And replacing these players. They're a fabulous team, and it's going to take a lot of taking down. If it's going to happen, I do believe it'll be in Munster. But I'm not so sure it's going to happen at the moment,
Yeah, Aaron Gallan, he scored 8 points, 7 were frees. Dermot Burns scored 3. One of those is a free. Donegal O'Dalig with 3. He looks really, really good. On the Tipperary side, there was 1-7 for Jason Ford. Tip only scored 3 frees in the entire game, actually. Jake Morris 1-3, Gród O'Connor 3, Bonner Maher scored a nice goal. But I would have said, right, if I'm to look from a Tipperary point of view, Nisha, that, okay, right, beaten well, in the sense of the overall flow of the game. The eye test would tell you that Limerick were on top throughout a lot of the second half in particular. But I'd look at it and I'd say, and actually if Seamus Kennedy if he has a cruciate, that's a massive
hope he's okay, yeah.
Oh, he's such a good player. But did a lot of the Tipperary players play that well? Now, I don't think that, I think Tipperary tried Robert Byrne and Brian McGrath at 6. I don't see either being 6 for championship. I also would look at the forward line and say Alan Tynan, didn't happen for him at all. John McGrath didn't happen. Gród O'Connor, now maybe he took a bang on the head, but he wasn't as influential as he could be. I thought Conor Stakeley was actually very good. And Jake Morris scored 1-3, but a lot of the game he was out of it. Now, look, maybe that's the price you pay when you've got a Michael Owen type guy. He can be brilliant for patches, and in other patches he goes out of it. But Tip didn't give up. But also, Tip made changes just like Limerick did. And just they played all the way to the end, irrespective of, it wasn't Tip's day either.
Yeah, because that's the thing is you could if you're Liam Cahill, you can kind of spin it in a way where you'd say, like, lads, you know, that's the 4 in a row All Ireland champions there. An awful lot of their players were playing. Yes, they were missing a couple. We're missing a couple. We didn't play well, but we only lost by a point, is what you'd be saying. We didn't concede a goal either. Limerick didn't score a goal. So there's things that are positive there. Another thing, I think a lot of people kind of underestimate and don't really take into consideration from when you're a forward or when you're trying to score in that heavy rain, right? The sliotar doesn't travel the same way. So it's really hard to score kind of because you're playing as if just it's normal, but it's not, because the sliotar is soaking, your grip is soaking, the hurl is soaking. It comes off it at a completely different trajectory. So like free takers are unbelievably important, and that's why some of the scores that Limerick got were really, really impressive, where they're kind of doing the turn, the dodge, and it's shot over the shoulder, kind of the Seamus Flanagan point that he always seems to get. Galan gets him as well. But from a tip point of view, yeah, I don't know what way you'd kind of take it. You can spin it one way or the other, where you go, we weren't really in the game. And as somebody said there, well, my brother Keane said in a WhatsApp group we're in, was I never knew there was such a thing as a 1 point hammering, where it's like, what was the possession at half time? Did Limerick have 60% possession or something like that? That's crazy in a hurling match. That's absolutely crazy in a hurling match. But then still to only win by a point. Whereas, so like Tom was saying about Kiley, you have such a high standard, and if anyone is familiar with Bill Belichick and the Patriots, and all their players always said they'd win a game and it felt like you lost the game, he would immediately nip everything in the bud and be like, listen, this needs to be improved, that needs to be improved, because there's a standard here, right? And that's probably the motivating factor all the time with Limerick now, that we're kind of looking for something bigger and better here now. And because the crop of players came together so well and it's so young, now all you need is that 1-2 lads to push for starting kind of year on year. They mightn't be pulling up trees underage, they mightn't be winning a minor and an under 21 every year, but they're doing enough, bringing through O'Donnell, bringing through Cathal O'Neill, bringing through lads like that, just 1 or 2 lads every year that push onto the panel. They play well in the league and then come on, in championship. So it was a funny game, and I know a lot of people actually on Twitter I saw were giving out stink about it, but I mean, what were about the style and all that kind of stuff. But I was kind of thinking to myself, because the sliotar was so wet, it wasn't going to be travelling 70, 60, 80 yards. So they had to pass and move and carry it to a certain point and then try pass it to somebody who's in a good position. So I think just sometimes that game especially was, you cut your cloth to suit your measure or whatever the hell that phrase is. I don't even know. But just, I thought it was an enjoyable enough game, actually. To be honest, I just don't know what people expect.
Yeah, I think as well, Nisha, John, they will take, Liam will take a lot of pluses out of them. Tipperary's intensity for a good part of the game was as good as I've seen. They really were in their faces. They were trying to take them on. The other thing, I'm going to make a little kind of a campaign this year, but as far as I know, Jason Ford doesn't have an all-star yet, does he not? I think I said it to you a few years ago.
Yeah.
And he's just such a brilliant player, and I just think that he always stands up. And I'll have, if he has any kind of a year this year, we'll have to have a campaign for him. He's a great player. But the other thing as well, and I know Bonner is out of the game, whatever, he's probably the best finisher of a goal, or one of them in the country. I mean, I'd be always telling youngsters and camogie players and that to hit the ground, but his finishing of goals is just quite amazing. And, like the Craig Morgan, Alan Tynan's a very good player as well. And, I do think, that they're going to, they are going to be an aspect. I had tipped Cork, Clare and Limerick to come out of Munster, but I think if there's anything to change that, I think it could be Tipperary. I think they have a very good manager, and they were still beaten by 1 point by a team that we've branded as almost unbeatable. So they're a long way away from, compared to where Waterford at the moment are. Tipperary are not in a bad place really, apart from that injury, and I hope that injury turns out to be okay.
Yeah, and one other thing, I think I said it in that same WhatsApp group there as well, is like Tip, probably, now I'm going to contradict myself a bit here now because it was a very wet night, but how many long range shots did they hit wide?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're kind of, I know people would say like, oh, Jake Morris was kind of quiet, but he still finished with 1-3. I'd love to have a quiet day and score 1-3 from play, like. But just the ball is broken out, someone gets it, and you're kind of going, right, put it in, put pressure on the full back line, and it's driven wide, and again, you're inside in the full forward line, and you're just watching the sliotar go over your head like that. And what can you do with that? Like, it just.
And Nisha, do you know, in fairness to Tipperary as well, they're not the only team that haven't cracked this last 20 minutes with Limerick. I mean, that's where most teams find it hard to stay with Limerick. You know, they're just seem to have that intensity, they have that bench, they have everything else. And Tipperary are as close probably as anyone to doing it. Clare, I suppose you would see Kilkenny last year maybe showed that they weren't quite there. But you know, in fairness to Tipperary, they're as close as anyone to kind of crack in that last 20 minutes. And the team that can keep that intensity and that level of performance in the last 20 minutes against Limerick, it's almost like playing the South African rugby team. They're so intense, they're so strong coming up to the end of a game. But if Tipperary can get there, they can cause problems. But you know, just showed the other night that they're that little bit short as well. You know, but 1 point is not a bad beating.
Yeah, and I suppose when you have a bench of Adam English and Seamus Flanagan, and like I have to say, Barry Murphy really impressed me in that first half. I think he won 3 scoreable frees. I can't remember if they were all converted. I thought Owen Connolly was excellent for Tipperary because he's able to break the line. Like, he's a huge man physically, and when he wins the ball in a packed area full of Limerick monsters, he's still able to get on the front foot. I think he was involved in that in a goal chance maybe in the first half. But like, another positive from Tip is there was no real goal chance offered up. Now, you could say maybe Galan, because he had that shot which was tame enough from 22 yards out or whatever it might be. The other side though was that they were able to play a nice ball in at times, Limerick, and then Galan almost, you know, I don't think he was going to be engaged by Ronan Maher, so he was able to just pop the ball over the bar. So that's trouble for Tipperary. Also, how Limerick keep catching Tipperary out on the puckouts. But you know what? Tipperary need to play Limerick over and over again, Tom. So, you know, league knockout stages, maybe get to a league final against Limerick again. Win, lose or draw. I think just Tip need to keep playing them over and over and over. Would you have ever been in a team where you felt like we just need to play Kilkenny or whoever a few more times and we'll really get our bearings?
Yeah. Well, it would have been an adage of Liam Griffin. I remember even when he took over the great 1 in a row team, lads, you know, that we consistently
great to get one.
He's lucky to get one anyway. I'll tell you that for not shame. But he would have. I remember in the Walsh Cup that year, Offaly were more our nemesis, and every time Griffin played them, it would be a Walsh Cup, a challenge match, the league quarter final. I remember we played him 3 times that year, you know, and to be honest with you, he had our best team out. He did what he said. If we can beat them. He says it. You know, let them put out if they want to put out a junior team against us. We keep beating. He said it makes a big difference, and I think that's true. I think the other thing about you know, Tipperary, they can look at the game. You know, when you're beaten by a point, you seem to look at all the things that you have to get right, and I think that's an advantage to Tipperary. And just back to John Kiley, I suppose John Kiley is trying to turn that in. That if we were beaten by a point, we have to look at all the problems as well, you know. So you win by a point, you think everything is perfect. So the more Limerick maybe beat teams like Tipperary by a couple of scores, the more the teams will be learning. But I think John Kiley is adamant that his team is going to learn even in victory, you know. And I think that's where our conundrum is going to do we're going to come with beating Limerick. But I agree with you. Yeah, I think the more to play them, the more confidence to get. Like Tip know they can go toe to toe with them probably for 45, 50 minutes now. They need to know that they can go toe to toe with them for the last 20 minutes. A bit like what they call it, Clare playing Kilkenny yesterday. Clare will be very, very disappointed. But Kilkenny will go down, but Clare, absolutely, you could see the Clare players, they were delighted yesterday. If you can get little small wins against them, the big one may come, and that's the road forward, I think, for Tipperary, for the teams that are trying to challenge against Limerick.
Yeah, just before I let you go, lads, because you've been great with your time, Galway beat Dublin 123-115, and I'm sure we all just saw the highlights at this stage. 4 red cards. Not ideal for Galway, is it, Nisha? Because you're going to be without Conor Whelan, Dahi Burke, and, well, Jack Grealish got 2 yellows, so I'm sure he'll be fine. Ronan Hayes was sent off for Dublin, but just 4 red cards in that game.
I saw somebody a bit of a conspiracy theory maybe. There was a Limerick man refereeing it, and Limerick are playing Galway next weekend, so he wanted to send off as many as he could. But like, what was? I'd love to have seen the whole match. I hadn't spoken to anyone that was at the match or anything either. I'd love to know what was going on. That there was 11 yellow cards and 4 reds, like that. You know, You wouldn't see that in a parish, neighbouring parish match, in a junior club championship match. Like what was going on? That 4 red cards were handed out, 11 yellows. There was an awful lot of soft yellows actually, I thought, in the Kilkenny and Clare game as well. But yeah, like not ideal for Galway, obviously, especially going into next week against Limerick, where you'd want your best team, like Tom was kind of saying, you want to kind of get up against playing against Limerick as often as you can, with your best team out there as often as you can, to see where exactly we line up, and it's good test and all that. But I'd love to have seen the whole game. I don't know what happened with the red cards, really. Like, how the hell there could be that many lads sent off? Dublin had lads sent off as well. But again, from a Dublin point of view there, it was close, but then to lose by 8 when you have that many men advantage, like, you're kind of, it's worrisome enough there, like, really, to be honest.
Well, they didn't beat Waterford last year when they had a 2-man advantage for the last 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, and like, remember as well, Slaughtneil lost to Piercing in a similar kind of thing, where it's 14 against 13, where it almost happens where nobody really knows what to do then. You kind of should be like, right, I'm free, you're free, everybody else is marking, and we'll play it. But sometimes the match just goes and there's no stoppages to kind of sort that out. Whereas, like, whatever, a year or two ago, you'd have the water break and you could sort it out handy and you'd sort yourselves out. But in the middle of the game, and again, this happened to Wexford against Tip in that All-Ireland semi-final, the man goes off, Tip get the man sent off, and then the Wexford kind of lost the run of themselves, like, didn't use the extra man at all. So I'd love to have seen the full game to know exactly what happened there from a Dublin point of view, because you shouldn't be losing to 12 men. Like, you just shouldn't be losing to 12 men in a hurling match.
And Tom, on that, and Galway in general.
Yeah, on the red cards, I actually, looking at it on television again, it doesn't really, Conor Whelan, who's one of my favourite players, Donald Burke, the two of them are two of my favourite players. I think they're just brilliant players. But Conor knew himself the minute he did it. It was a little bit of a dud, but he was going. I don't think you could argue. I think the biggest problem, I think referees need to reevaluate the first yellow. Because sometimes they're given yellows because that's safe enough to give a yellow. It's actually not safe to give a yellow if it's not a yellow. And I'm not saying that Johnny Murphy yesterday, I don't think you could have argued too much with what Johnny did. I didn't really see what Daithí Burke did on the television. I could see him going and hitting late or whatever. I don't know, was that a yellow? Unless, no, I didn't see it. But I just think that referees need to reevaluate that. Lads, it's a man's game. There's going to be mistimed tackles. There's going to be a few slaps here and there. Don't give the first yellow unless you feel, because very likely, if you're given a first yellow, the next time you have to talk to that guy, you're going to have to give him a red. And I feel there's soft yellows being given in first halves of games, certainly if they deserve a yellow, but I think that would do away with what maybe happened in Galway yesterday as well. And I'm not saying the yellows were soft, but at the end of the day, like, I mean, it's gone to the point now, lads. I'd say if a Limerick player or Limerick defender got a yellow, they have the resources to just take the player off if they had to, But if you're on a yellow now, you're in dangerous territory in a hurling match, lads.
Just before we finish up, Tom, for the year, do you see Galway being in the mix? Henry's used 30 different players during the league, or maybe slightly more, so he's obviously searching far and wide.
Yeah, do you know what? They have huge talent. They're an enigma, really, Galway, because I think if you look back over the last couple of years, they probably should be after winning more than they've won, lads, in fairness to them. There's some absolutely brilliant players. I think Leinster is a must for them this year, and it won't be easy, but I think they will win Leinster. I think they will have a big impact. I do think physically that Galway have the ability to put it up to Clare, or to Limerick, I should say. But lads, I'm back to this last 15, 20 minutes. We saw it in the All-Ireland semi-final last year. Limerick just batter you down. Galway were absolutely brilliant. I was at the game in the first half last year in the All-Ireland semi-final. Could have been maybe a little bit more ahead or whatever. But this last 20 minutes, I don't know what they're feeding the Limerick fellas, but I'll tell you this for nothing. They seem to they're like lads that are taking they're after eating 2 extra spuds at half time or something. But they literally come out and they will batter you. And this last 20 minutes, Galway have struggled. I think they will be... they'll have their team. I'd like to see maybe Fintan Burke wing back, Daithí Burke full back. I think they will. They have the forwards, Jason Ford. Some of these guys are serious players. Conor Cooney is the one player. He was on my player team of our fantasy team last year. Didn't have his best year, but he really came back with the club. I think he's a player that needs to hurl well for them. He's a great player. I think he's going to be important. Connor Whelan, super player. I think they have the physicality, but they're still 15 minutes short of beating Limerick, lads.
Okay, well look,
I think Johnny Glynn at his best now could be a huge X factor as well now coming back. I saw there someone commented he was playing a match at the weekend there. I think he scored 3-1. I think someone had that comment in there earlier on the show. Like if he comes back and is playing at his best, that is a massive addition. Like talk about a target man, powerful man that can play hurling, and he's an absolute animal. Like so, there you go. I think Galway at their best are as good as any team. So yeah, it'd be exciting to see what they'll be like now this year.
Yeah. As I say, a Leinster is a must. A Leinster is a must, and that's a bit of pressure. But the funny thing Nish, you'd have, which then I remember Wexford were hurling pretty well against them in Wexford Park a few years ago. There was a wind in Wexford Park. That's not a surprise. But the sweeper system was a dream. We were flying everything. And the next minute, Johnny Glynn moved in full forward. The Galway goalkeeper, he just kept landing the ball on our fullback. And this man is a monster under the ball, you know. So unless he's lost a little bit of what he had before he went, he's going to be a major, major plus for them.
Well, lads, look, absolutely brilliant to have you both on the show. Really appreciate it, and we'll chat again soon.
Sound.
Thanks, lads.
Look.
Okay, great to have the two boys on the show there. Just in terms of goat of the week, couldn't but give it to a certain forward from Cork, so we'll make Alan Connolly the goat of the week. That's it otherwise from the show. We'll be back again on Thursday, previewing everything that's coming next weekend. We'll chat to you then. Don't forget that the audio podcast is at patreon.com/OurGame.